Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. And as I have told earlier that I will be discussing about the international treaties in the today's video based on which the environmental law has been developed in India. So that is why it is very important to understand what were the international treaties and convention and how they have created impact in the regulation and laws that we have for environmental law in India right now. So let's start with the video. I'll be discussing about all the treaties in the sequence with the year in which they happened and the main points from those treaties which are important from the perspective of your examination. All right. So environmental laws, the first most important conference that happened, which is very important for you for both environmental law as well as the people development and environment unit in the paper one. So when we talk about Stockholm Declaration of UN Conference on Human Environment, the short form of this is SDUNCH E. Okay. So HE is the important part because Stockholm Declaration will also be called as the UN Conference on Human Environment. So there can be question asked on this particular term also because for different declaration there are different terms which have been used. So one is human environment for Stockholm Declaration, which happened in 1972. Years are also important because there can be question asked about the series in which the convention and treaties has happened. So what was the purpose of this declaration? Climate change and sustainable development. These were the two important points on which this declaration was done and this conference has happened. There were three main pillars which were there in this conference: economic, environmental, and social. Then there were three informal pillars as well: the people, profit, and planet, on which the agenda was based for this particular conference. And there was an action plan as well, which was not binding, it was kind of a guiding line for the climate change and the regulation which can be made for the same, and which led to the UNEP. UNEP is the highest body under United Nations for the purpose of environment regulation, environment protection, which is known as United Nations Environmental Program, which we will be discussing later also. So this was Stockholm Declaration. Then next was the Vienna Convention. The year of Vienna Convention is 1985. The purpose of Vienna Convention was to protect the ozone layer. So purpose of all the convention and conference are very important. So for Vienna Convention, the purpose was protecting the ozone layer, and it became effective in 1988, and India has ratified this particular convention in 1991. So there are 3 years which are important, and there can be different question asked in MCQ that in which year India ratified, in which year Vienna Convention was made effective. So for everything there are different years. Vienna Convention 1985, effective 1988, India 1991, Stockholm Declaration 1972. Now Vienna Convention, one more important part is that it was not legally binding, right? So these are the most important point that you need to remember about Vienna Convention from the point of view of your examination. Then Montreal Protocol, 1987. Next, after 1985, 1987, Montreal Protocol. The purpose of this was to phase out the chlorinated compound and to reduce the ODS, also known as the ozone depleting substance. So these substance has to be reduced, and chlorinated compound has to be phased out, removed from the environment. These were the objective of this particular protocol. This happened in 1987 and India ratified it in 1992. India ratified to Vienna Convention in 1991 and to Montreal Protocol in 1992. And this was legally binding, and this is also known as the most successful treaty till now because it was legally binding, and earlier before this the convention which happened, Vienna Convention, was not legally binding. That is why Montreal Protocol is very important. Then One more important part which was discussed in this Montreal Protocol was that all nations cannot be treated equally. Okay? Because all of them are a participant to this whole environmental pollution and the impact differently. So they should be treated differently as well. So this was Montreal Protocol. Then Then a small, not very huge, but there was a report which is known as Brundtland Report 1987. The theme of this particular report was our common future, and in this, the sustainable development concept was defined and discussed. Then Basel Convention 1989 next. The purpose of the Basel Convention was to control the transboundary movements which were happening. So when there is a country which has certain hazardous waste, they dispose in the other country those waste, the countries which are obviously weaker. So to control this mechanism which is happening, this Basel Convention happened in 1989 to control these transboundary movements. And this was a word which was used in that particular convention, which is NIMBY, NIMBY, which is not in my backyard syndrome. Then now there are three very, very important parts for the summit that happened. Okay, there are three summit related, like you can see here. Yes. So this UNCED, the Earth Summit, right? It happened in 1992, also known as the Rio Declaration. Okay. So Rio Declaration 1992, UNCED, which is United Nations Convention on Environment and Development, also known as Earth Summit 1992. This was the first one. Then the second one was WSSD, which is World Summit on Sustainable Development. It happened in 2002, just 10 years after the Rio. And this happened in this place, Johannesburg. Then third one is UNCSD, which is United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. This was 2012, which is plus 20. After 20 years this happened. So first was 1992, plus 10 2002, plus 20 2012. There were three in total. The first one was the Rio Declaration, the Earth Summit, which was UNCED, Environment and Development. Next, 2002, which was WSSD, which is World Summit on Sustainable Development. And then the last one, 2012, which was UNCSD, which is United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development. So there are three: 1992, 2002, and 2012. This is the series. So you need to remember this for paper one as well as paper two. So it's important. Then next is hmm, Kyoto Protocol, 1997 to 2005. This is very famous. You must have heard of this in paper one at least. So it is important because it provided the like a framework for the Convention on Climate Change. So it was basically about the climate change, and this has given various concepts about green gas, what are green gases, which gas we will consider green gas, and how we will be reducing this. The techniques also they have given. There are various mechanism that they have discussed and provided in the Kyoto Protocol. So this is very, very important for the purpose of climate change. This is a very important protocol. So it has talked about the global warming. It has talked about the greenhouse gas, and this is a concept that came in Kyoto Protocol, which was the common but differentiated responsibilities, because there are two category of countries that they have categorized. One was historically biggest polluting like US, France, etc., and those who are recently polluting like India and China. So they have categorized two category uh, based on responsibility, that how much responsible they are for the greenhouse emission and the global warming. And then they have talked about these three mechanisms: emission trading, clean development mechanism, and joint implementation, through which we can reduce these problems which are existing. So in detail, you can read about these three mechanisms to understand, but for the purpose of paper 2, this much is sufficient. There were three annexures also given for the different kind of countries, etc., in the Kyoto Protocol 1, 2, and 3. Then they have talked about reduction of 5% the emission by 2012. This was a target set by the Kyoto, Kyoto Protocol. Then next is important part is UNEA, which we talked about in the first slide itself. So it was United Nations Environment Assembly, which was the highest level UN body, and it was established just after the Stockholm Declaration to comply with and to implement the things that were discussed in the conference. And 23 June 2014, there was a UNEP program under which there were four important guidelines which were mentioned, which are important. The first one is the state responsibility and the environment. So what is the responsibility of the state for the protection of the environment? Then no harm rule. Then the principle 21 of the Stockholm Declaration. And what was that? So these kind of questions are also asked, that from Stockholm Declaration, what was principle 5, what was principle 10, kind of this. There will be options given, but these are the kind of questions that are also very frequently asked in the examination. So there are some principle that I have mentioned in the next slide based on the question that have been asked in the previous papers. So based on that, you can also refer to other principles also, because these kind of questions are asked. So principle 21 of Stockholm Declaration has been asked earlier. And what is that? It is basically, there is a doctrine that has been written over here. So this doctrine talks about using the property in such a manner that it does not injure others. So you have the environment, you have your like country's property, but you cannot use it in such a way that it is injuring the others. This is the principle which was given in the Stockholm Declaration. Then Rio Earth Summit that we discussed, Earth Summit in 1992. 1992, the Earth Summit happened in the Rio. Then the principles which are most important, which have been asked in the examination, I have identified a few which are very, very important. The first one is the Rio Declaration 1992, in which principle 3 has been given, which is about sustainable development, and principle 16 has been given, which is about the precautionary polluter pay principle, triple P, polluter pay principle. Then Stockholm Declaration, where 21 and 22 has been discussed in the last slide, not injure the others. And then principle 1 and 2 of the Stockholm, which talks about the intergenerational equity. Then Earth Summit 1992, which was Rio, and in the Rio, there is also a principle of precautionary principle, and you can find out which number principle has discussed about the precautionary principle. So yes, that was it. So these were the most important part of the International Treaties Convention Protocol. I have mentioned all the important ones. So yes, I hope this will be helpful to you, and you can now research upon these conferences further if you want. And in the next video, I'll be talking about the NGT, the National Green Tribunal that India has, and what is the provision given under the legislation itself, and what are the important parts from the legislation that we need to cover for the purpose of the examination. That I will be doing in the next video. To hope to see you very, very soon, and I hope that this video has helped you for your preparation. Thank you so much. See you soon. All the best.